Last year, my husband Brian and I welcomed a new member into our family. It's been such an absolute joy watching our daughter grow, but let me take some time to share about that very first day she entered the world. Keep watching to hear about how I saw God's hand throughout the birthing process. Hi everyone, it's Alisa from Captivated by Him. Here on this channel, we share content on how to live a life that is completely captivated by God, whether that's in our friendships, having dignity, and more. We have also released some videos about our own personal lives and how to stay captivated by Him in real life events. So today, I'm going to let you in on what was on my mind the day I gave birth to my daughter. It was 2 days before my due date when I was woken up very early in the morning by some mild contractions. This wasn't entirely new as I had been experiencing Braxton Hicks contractions for the previous few weeks. But eventually, after an hour of regular contractions, I realized that this was it. These weren't Braxton Hicks. Our baby girl was on her way. I called the hospital to let them know that I was in labor, only to be told to try waiting another hour before heading to that hospital so that I can progress as much as possible before arriving. When I heard this, I was a little uneasy. I was already in a decent amount of pain and counting my breathing. And this was when I recalled the familiar passage of Proverbs 3:5-6 from memory. That says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will make your path straight." I decided to trust that God would help me handle the increasing pain, even if I thought my pain tolerance was low. I even thought about how God had helped thousands of women deal with childbirth for centuries before epidurals existed. What I was experiencing was not abnormal. I could have confidence that the God who had the power to create life in my womb also has the power to help me get through just an hour more of labor pains. I brought these requests before God and also asked that the upcoming delivery would go smoothly and ultimately that through it all, no matter what happened, I would trust in Him. So by the time we finally checked into the hospital and were brought to the delivery room, it ended up being about 3 hours since I had made that first phone call. When the doctor was administering the epidural, we were surprised to find out that I was already past halfway through labor. While the pain had indeed been intense, I was anticipating it to be significantly worse at a level that was unimaginable. After all, I had always thought that I had a low pain tolerance. But it turned out that with God's help, I could tolerate more than I thought was possible. It was the first of many times throughout the day that God was faithful to answer prayers. After getting the epidural, labor slowed down and we had some time on our hands. Despite being very tired, I was so excited that I could not fall asleep. I passed some of the time by messaging many friends from the church and giving them updates on how labor was progressing. But I passed the rest of the time by thanking God for His faithfulness in bringing us to that moment. As I sat in the hospital bed connected to IVs and monitors, it brought back some memories from the last time I had been in a hospital bed connected to IVs and monitors, which was the stillbirth of our first dear child, Anna. I share about how God gave us hope during that season of my life in another video on this channel, which will be linked down below. But to summarize, 2 years before my daughter's birth, the Lord had taken our firstborn home to heaven during the second trimester of pregnancy. Being back in the hospital reminded me of when I had delivered Anna, along with the rest of our journey of waiting for a child, which had included 2 other miscarriages. But while I thought remembering these things might have made me sad or anxious, it instead brought me a lot of joy. It made me think back on all the things God had taught me during those years. Trusting in God and being content in His timing had been much needed lessons that made the current moment that much more sweet and rewarding. God had been so faithful to hear all our prayers, and now it was only a matter of hours before we finally met the answer to our prayers face to face. As 1 John 5:14-15 says, "This is the confidence which we have before Him, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us in whatever we ask, we know that we have the requests which we have asked from Him." As I continued to wait for our baby to make her appearance, I also read through the entirety of Psalm 139, and verse 16 particularly says this: "Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them." I considered how God already knew the exact number of days my daughter would have to live, and I asked that each of those days would be meaningful for eternity. I asked God to save her at a young age so that she can spend the maximum number of those ordained days in service to Him. As she was about to start day 1 of her little life, I prayed that I would trust in the Lord to watch over her all the days of her life, even for those that I may not be around to see one day. Between praying, reading Psalm 139, and messaging updates to friends, the time passed by quickly, and before I knew it, it was time to push the baby out. God's grace continued to be apparent as my delivery nurse was incredibly kind and competent. She coached me through the birthing process very gently and clearly. So with her help, everything went smoothly, which was another gracious answer to prayer. When my daughter was finally born, my first thought was, "She's finally here!" Through all those years of prayers, God had always known that this baby would be His answer. As I held her tiny little body to my chest, I'm slightly embarrassed to say that I definitely cried more than my daughter did at her own birth. The joy of seeing the manifestation of God's grace was just so satisfying. Throughout the day of my daughter's birth, and even in the years leading up to it, God's grace was evident constantly. Although I hadn't known up until the day my daughter was born whether God would answer our prayers by giving us a child, I learned to pray according to His will, learning to be content with what He gives, to trust in His goodness, and to be confident that He cares for me regardless of how He answers. It is already a grace that He even hears our prayers to begin with. What a good God we serve. If you found this video to be encouraging, or if you have seen God answer prayers in your life, please feel free to leave a comment down below and also give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so we can continue to grow in being captivated by God together. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay captivated.